We finally reach the conclusion to the most epic movie trilogy of all time, the Santa Claus 3, The Escape Clause. When last we saw these people, Scott Calvin had to use all of his Christmas magic to manipulate this woman into abandoning her life on Earth. I keep doing that. They are still on Earth. But she still had to leave her normal life and live forever in the North Pole as Santa Claus's wife. Or until Scott dies and a new Santa is chosen, at which point she will be cast into the Arctic void, never to be spoken of again. The movie begins with Mrs. Claus telling her class the story of how she learned to deal with the fact that she had to leave her old life and be the new Mrs. Claus, and we learn that Santa impregnated her pretty quick to further anchor her to this new hellish existence. These aren't screams of pain either. This is a scared, broken woman who knows that she is trapped.
Honey, I'm afraid it was a false alarm.
Again? I stopped a pedicure for this?
And like the elves don't respect her now. Imagine when Scott is dead. And I know nothing of elf culture, but it's not entirely unreasonable to assume that they would eat her. Dr. Hismus makes a house call to check on the baby because it's a week overdue. Now just lie back, Mrs. Claus. I'm gonna check your cervix now. I apologize in advance for my cold hands, but we are in the North Pole. Alrighty, let's see what we've got going on down there.
Santa, the production line has been set back so far behind that, we need you on the workshop floor immediately.
Oh, thank goodness, Curtis. Perfect timing. This was about to get horrifying. Also, if they would have waited any longer to do this movie, they would have had to make up some bullshit about head elves needing to shave. You almost got aged out like Bernard did. Curtis tells Santa that the Council of Legendary Figures has come to the North Pole for an emergency meeting. And just then, Mrs. Claus finally breaks down and says that she misses her family.
We are your family, right, elves? We're her family, right?
We love you, Mrs. Claus!
Yeah, that's not gonna help. So instead of doing the kind thing and allowing Carol to just go home, Scott says that he'll bring her parents to the North Pole. Sure. Kidnap more people, Scott. And we learn that Carol's parents think that Scott is a toy maker in Canada. There's going to be a whole lot of lying going on. Which is what you want from Santa Claus. The council convenes because Jack Frost is charged with trying to upstage Santa Claus by starting his own holiday of Frostmas. And that's it? That's what's going to jumpstart this whole plot? We get new holidays all the time. But I guess Jack is lucky that they're only wanting to kick him out of the council. Because when the Sweetest Day Imp tried to start his own holiday, they had him summarily executed. Santa complains that they're having production issues and that he has to fly his in-laws up to the North Pole. And Cupid casually mentions the option of the escape clause, but Santa says that it's too extreme. And Jack Frost offers to help Santa at the workshop as a form of community service. Santa then goes to his ex-wife's house to visit his son, and gets pressured into letting his ex-wife's daughter and her new husband Neil visit the North Pole. And back at the North Pole, Jack Frost easily manipulates Curtis into revealing what the escape clause is. And so basically every Santa that has ever lived has their own personal snow globe in the Hall of Snow Globes, and if they wish on the snow globe to have never been Santa at all, then they'll travel back in time before they put the suit on and make it like it never happened. And this is what Cupid suggested because Scott was worried about his in-laws visiting. Like, that is quite the escalation, Cupid. And also, the bending of the fabric of space-time is what gets me. The Santa magic is just far too powerful. Who created this magic? Scott then goes to his in-laws to take them to the airport, and it sounds like they haven't seen their daughter for quite some time.
Business must be very good.
Busy as usual.
So busy you can't bring our daughter now to visit our mother and father once in a while?
I mean, yeah, why can't Carol just come back to visit? Or Scott and Carol. Scott leaves the North Pole all the damn time to visit his own family, and Scott brings a Sandman to knock him out so they can fly him to the North Pole without them knowing. And back at the North Pole, Jack Frost gets to work on Mrs. Claus, planting the seed of regret to try to make her feel like she made the wrong decision marrying Santa Claus.
A little sad and neglected maybe, just needs a little tender loving care that nobody's bothering to give, don't you think?
Man, Jack Frost is a manipulative asshole. And I always kind of breathe a sigh of relief that I'm not a sociopath, because every time I see a villain scheming in a movie, I'm just like, none of this would occur to me. Like, my big scheme would be to use Scott's name and apply to a really nice job far away and see if he goes for it. Or, you know, push him down a flight of stairs and put on his coat as he chokes to death in his own blood. So glad I'm not a sociopath. So Scott shows up with his in-laws. Oh, and his ex-wife and her current husband and their daughter. Oh man, there is nothing like confirming that your daughter has not been murdered by her mysterious older husband.
And I'm sure you have a perfectly good reason for shutting us out of your life.
She doesn't. Scott has been home twice this movie alone. Like, Carol is just a figurehead. She could live back on Earth. Again, I almost said on Earth. What is the matter with me? They live on Earth. This is Earth. The North Pole is on Earth. But like, she could live in America for like 10 months out of the year.
Who are you?
Who are you?
I'm Lucy. Scott's my uncle.
Oh. I'm Frost. Jack Frost.
Who?
Jack Frost. You know, the Jack Frost?
Never heard of you.
I hate this kind of thing. Like, we know Jack Frost sucks, so this interaction is a good bit of comeuppance for him, but Lucy is a guest on the North Pole. She literally knows no one here. So is she just saying, I don't know who you are to every single person that she meets? Like, if Jack Frost was a nice character, then Lucy would have responded with, oh, nice to meet you, or something along those lines. But since he's a bag of ass, then she treats him like shit, even though she doesn't know that he's a villain. Do better, writers. Come on. Hacky shit. It's hack. So Jack is still in full-on scheming mode, and he starts sabotaging all the machinery in the workshop. To what end, I don't know, because I'm too lazy to be an evil mastermind.
Oh my, I love your hair.
You do?
Yeah, I do.
I love yours.
Really?
I've never seen anything like that.
You're so adorable. You divine little kitten, you.
Oh, okay, so he's just trying to f Carol's mom. Alright, I guess not everything has to revolve around trying to be the new Santa. Jack does have other interests.
The professionals at it.
Stay low, hit the base of the flame.
Your pants are on fire.
Fire in the hole!
Fire in the butthole, more like it. Ho, 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 ho. So Lucy asks Scott to show her the snow globe room, and he gives Lucy her own snow globe with her inside. And that's your soul. Now should that snow globe shatter, then so will your soul shatter, and you'll never be able to find peace in this world or the next. Ho, 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 ho. They leave, and we see just an absolutely fatal flaw in the Hall of Snow Globe security. Just an amateur hour. I mean, but I guess the criminal would then be trapped in there with limited oxygen and no food. And considering how infrequently the Hall of Snow Globes gets visitors, yeah, I guess the problem would just kind of sort itself out. And Lucy catches Jack Frost leaving the Hall of Snow Globes with Scott's snow globe. No discernible reason why Jack Frost was able to make it out of there alive, but whatever. I guess it's a kid's movie. Lucy calls for her parents and inadvertently marks them for death. And Jack Frost freezes them and traps Lucy in the closet with her dead parents? I'm assuming they're dead. And so we just get more of Jack Frost sabotaging things and driving a wedge between Scott and Carol, and Scott just getting more and more frazzled because of work problems.
I left a while ago.
This man is brimming with Christmas magic. Like, this is a dude who can deliver presents to every child in one night, and he's having trouble making toys because one guy knocks over a tree and lights a few fires. If your whole operation could be disrupted by one person, then any semblance of control was just an illusion. I think it's time for this house of cards to come crumbling down. And so because a tree did fall down, a big fight breaks out, and Carol and her parents say that they should leave. And Jack finally sees his opening and tricks Scott into wishing he had never been Santa while holding a snow globe. And so Scott and Jack Frost get transported back 12 years to the night Scott became Santa. The old Santa dies again, and Jack puts on the coat and disappears, and Scott then gets transported back to the present, but as regular Scott Calvin.
Christmas Eve is when you spend time with your family. Where's my family tonight?
Well, you rarely see them, and you don't mention them.
And so not only does the escape clause send you back to the real world, it creates an entire storyline to fill in the missing time that you have no memory of. But you still retain all of the memories of your life as Santa. Like the devil created the Santa Claus magic. That is the only explanation. It was started by Satan to create hell on earth. Like everything about being Santa is just the most horrifying thing imaginable. Scott goes to see his ex-wife Laura and his son Charlie, but they both hate him. And we learn that Neil and Laura are divorced, and Neil took Lucy to the North Pole, which Jack Frost has turned into an amusement park. So Scott travels to the North Pole and runs into Jack Frost.
I've been waiting. It's been 12 years already?
Oh, okay, so you've been Santa for 12 years? Which means you've had to go through the Mrs. Claus. I mean, obviously, you must have. Every Santa has to. So, let's see your wife. I mean, it's a pretty important clause. The last movie made it abundantly clear that there is really no way around it. So, Jack, where's your wife?
Oh, hello? Love what you've done with the place?
Produce your wife, Jack. And so Jack Frost cannot show his Mrs. Claus because there isn't one, because the writers forgot. And so Scott records him saying,
Who said I wish I'd never been Santa at all?
And he asks Lucy to get Frost's snow globe and bring it to him. Lucy throws the snow globe and Jack catches it, and Scott plays the recording, and they again get transported back 12 years, and this poor Santa has to die for the third time. And I like how it never occurs to Scott to maybe save this dude's life. Like, maybe he would have been a great Santa Claus. But he doesn't, and this guy has to be transported to Santa Hell for the third time. And so the Scott Calvin from now watches the Scott Calvin from 12 years ago put on the coat, and Jack Frost and Scott Calvin from now disappear and get transported back to Christmas Eve now. And so the first time that they went back 12 years, Scott Calvin from now, the big jolly Santa Claus Scott Calvin, was trying to put on the coat. What would have happened if he would have put on the coat? Because if he put on the coat, then the Scott Calvin from 12 years ago would have never put on the coat, which means that the Scott Calvin from now would never have existed. But the writers also forgot about the Mrs. Claus, so I'm sure they did not consider this at all. And so Scott tells Carol that he'll change and appreciate her from now on, and that's all well and good, but what if Jack Frost just stabbed Scott in the throat with a sharpened candy cane? Like, what would happen? Scott's not wearing his coat. Will putting on anything that the Santa was wearing when he died work? Or would it be a mad dash to find Santa's coat? Again, these are the questions that audiences want answered. And if that did happen, and Scott was laying there dying, he still has a snow globe. Would he be able to wish that he wasn't Santa again and go back in time and reset? I'm sure the Santa Claus's TV show will answer all of these questions. Peyton Manning will just give a long 30-minute explanation of all of these questions. And Jack Frost says that he can't unfreeze Laura and Neil unless he unfreezes himself. And Lucy gives him a warm hug and turns him into Clifford. And so that was the Santa Claus 3, the Escape Clause. And again, it was just full of weird rules and dumb toys. Now I get that they couldn't have all the awesome toys because they just couldn't get the licensing for it. But I think that every Christmas movie should have a budget to put awesome toys in. Toys like the Talk Boy, Sega CD, the Nickelodeon Alarm Clock, Nickelodeon GAC, the Terminator 2 Bioflesh Regenerator. It never worked, but it was still an awesome concept. The Pogo Ball, or its more worthless cousin, the Moon Shoes, the original Super Soaker, those weird rubber puppet faces, the Konami handheld Ninja Turtles game, Police Academy action figures, that electricity ball from Spencer's Gifts, Gooey Louie, Castle Grayskull, and Snake Mountain, the Spytek long-range microphone, the Joker laughing ball from the 1989 Tim Burton Batman film, this Super Mario Bros. Lunchbox and thermos, Kit from Knight Rider with B-turtle-necked Michael Knight action figure, the G.I. Joe Night Raven Sky Striker XP-14F combat jet with a little baby jet that was on top of it, and of course My Pet Monster and Fireball Island. I know you've gotten Fireball Island for every single birthday and Christmas, but you can never have too many copies of Fireball Island because Fireball Island is amazing.